Okay, let's break down Learning Target 1 as I will try to do in each video. So Learning Target 1 says identify types of correlation on a scatter plot. So when I'm looking at this, I see two words, correlation and scatter plot. So I have to be able to identify different types of correlation. So that means there's going to be different types of this word, correlation, okay, which is what we're going to define in this video. And you're going to see those on a scatter plot. So as you can see below, there's all of these different pictures of scatter plots. Remember, a scatter plot is just an arrangement of points on a graph, an X and Y graph. And that was something that we've talked about in 8th grade before, where it's just an arrangement of points on a graph. And the pattern that you see in those is called a correlation. And the different types of correlation that you'll see are sorted by direction and by strength. So they're sorted by 1 and 2 different ways. And each direction and strength has 2 different ways that it could go. So the direction that it could go is in a positive direction or a negative direction. Okay, a positive directions has high X values with high Y values, and also low with low as well. So what I mean with that is when the X gets bigger, the Y also gets bigger, or when the X gets smaller, the Y also gets smaller. So the two variables are going in the same direction. A negative correlation has high X values with low Y values, and vice versa. So when the X is high, the Y is low, or when the X is low, the Y is high. They go in opposite directions. Okay? So when I'm looking at these, I'm first going to sort them out by saying whether they're positive or negative. So for example, when I look at this one, this value, this point is low on the x-axis and low on the y-axis. The furthest point over is high on the x-axis and high on the y-axis. As the x increases, as we go to the right on the x-axis, the y values also go up. So that means that this is a positive correlation. And same thing with D. When I'm looking at D here, when I have a low value on the x-axis, I have a higher value on the y. And when my x gets high, my y is lower. So as you can see, as the x increases, the y value decreases. So that has a negative direction. Okay? So the other thing we're going to look for when we're talking about correlation is its strength. A strong correlation has points that are close to linear. So what that means is linear means in a line. So whether they go up or down, if they are pretty close to being linear, then it's said to be a strong correlation. A weak correlation has points farther from linear. So if there are more scattered points around, it would be called a more weak correlation. And then there's also one more scenario that we didn't talk about, but I'll add that in here at the end. So for example, when I look at A, these are perfectly linear, and we would say that they are strong, or we could also say actually perfect. In this case, this is actually not a scatter plot, this is just a line, but it's still a good example. This is an extreme, and in most real-world situations you would not see this type of correlation. This one over here that I labeled negative is also strong. It does not have to be perfect for it to be strong. Strong just means that they're pretty close to being linear, okay? So this is a negative correlation because it's going in that direction, and it's strong because the points are close to a line. Now if I look at B, I would say those are moving in a slightly positive direction. The bigger the x gets, the bigger the y also gets. A larger x has a larger y, a smaller x has a smaller y in general. Something I also do sometimes is I draw a circle around all of the points, and if I see that it's kind of moving in the upward direction, then that helps me to figure out if it has a direction or not. So I would say positive, but in this case, because it was kind of harder to see if they're in a line, I would say that this one is weak. And this one is just going to this first learning target is just going to be kind of by your estimation. And then I also see this one over here. This is another negative correlation, but similar to B that we just finished, it's also weak. And then the last scenario with C and F is that sometimes data will show up and it's not linear at all. And so what we say is that there's no correlation, which just basically means the same thing as saying there's no linear pattern. Okay, so even though this one has a pattern, it's not linear, it's not in a straight line, so we cannot say that it has a correlation at all. So for your homework or for your own practice, what you're going to do is you're going to take each type that I've written out here and you're going to draw your own example. So make sure you draw in an x and a y axis and then plot some points. Don't just draw a line, but plot some points to show each of these different types. You actually won't need one of the boxes. You only need 5 of the boxes to do that.